Well, thank you very much, Tony, for coming to my podcast, Business Breakthroughs. It's a privilege to have you here. We met in Cairns in Australia just a month ago, actually. And then we also shooted some videos there on the street with Lawrence. And, we spoke about health and a lot of different things. So I thought like, hey, Tony knows a lot. So let's get him on the podcast, interview him, find out what he can bring to our audience, and also get to know you a little bit more. So can you share with us a little bit more about yourself? What is it you do? And so we can get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, well, thanks, Vincent. Thanks very much for having me on the podcast. Much appreciated. A bit of my background. My background's food science and technology. So I've got a degree in food technology and microbiology. Been in the food industry for well over 30 odd years and been general manager of a couple of food companies. One making meat pizza toppings for Pizza Hut and the other one making hamburger patties for Burger King. So I've been in that animal protein and the protein side for quite a while. And after that, I went into my own consulting business, and I was consulting with clients, FMCG clients, and so on. And around about 2017, I really saw that things were starting to change. Like you and like everyone, we all get our newsletters right from our industry, and I'm reading my industry newsletters, and I'm going like, "Wow, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that technology exists." And look at those trends, those consumer trends, how fast they're moving. And so I looked at that and I started talking to my executive friends and saying, well, look, how do you just keep up with all of this information that's coming, all of these changes that we're seeing in the food industry? And the usual reply was, I can't. I've got problems to solve, people to recruit, meetings to go to, strategies to prepare. And Tony, you want me to think 5, 10, 20 years into the future? Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I sat back and went, well, someone needs to be able to communicate and investigate all these changes that are going on. And being me, I said, well, why shouldn't it be me? My wife's most hated phrase, how hard can it be? So I got into that more the futurist side of things, looking at what the future of food would be like. But when I'm working with clients, I'm only working with a small group of people, right? Maybe half a dozen people at a time. So the influence is not very wide. So then I decided, again, I'd become a speaker. Why don't I speak on this? And again, how hard can it be? Harder than I thought, but anyway. And I started doing that in about mid-2019. Which turned out to be not quite such a good time to be starting a speaking business as we may have thought at the time. So basically here in Australia, I'm based in Brisbane, Australia, things basically stopped dead. And we couldn't even get out of the country for nearly 2 years. So after that, I started rebuilding the speaking business, and then now I've sort of been speaking around the world in the last couple of years. I spent in 2024, spent 9 weeks in Europe doing some speaking, Frankfurt, Helsinki, and then last year I was 6 weeks in Europe, and I spoke in Vienna, Prague, and London, and that's sort of where I am now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for sharing the story. How did you go about it? So now tell me more about the food industry, where you see the future is going with it, and then what you should be maybe aware of. Like if you let's say I'm like 35, like what should I be looking at, and then where do you think the industry will go as a general, like when you are speaking about it, obviously to those companies?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, like a lot of industries, but the food industry in particular, we're seeing a rate of change and new technologies like we've never seen before. As I say, I've been in the food industry for over 30 years. I've never seen the rate of change that we've seen in the last 5 or 7 years. And so technology, both for industry and consumers, is becoming ever more important in determining what the future of food will look like. If we look towards 2050, there's going to be 11 billion entities on the planet. And I say entities because besides our 9.7 billion humans, there'll be 1.3 billion pet cats and dogs, all eating nearly as much protein as a human. So the problem we have is feeding 11 billion, not just the humans, but our pets as well. If we look at that, basically, this is the amount of food that we can grow within planetary boundaries with the current food system. That's how much food we need. So how do we fill that gap? And that's where I see new technologies coming in to help fill the gap. A lot of people say, we need to, we're going to disrupt the food industry. And I say, the last thing in the world we need to do is disrupt the food industry. Look at what's happening with the current disruption. That's not going very well, is it? I mean, we've got so many supply chain and other problems. While we're talking today, the Middle East war is still on.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is keep improving the current global food system, but add another layer of production that doesn't use arable land, that doesn't use much fresh water, and doesn't produce as much pollution or use as many other resources. And that's what we need to do to reach our goal, that challenge of feeding the 11 billion fairly, sustainably by 2050.
Okay, wow. And are there already the technology exists where to add this another layer, like you mentioned, so we are capable of getting there in those 24 years?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think, as I say when I'm speaking, Vincent, I say, look, technology has solved humanity's problems since the dawn of time, right? From the invention of the plow to the invention of antibiotics and mRNA vaccines. Technology has solved humanity's problems, always has, always will. How we apply those technologies is, of course, a challenge. Like most things, your plow can be beaten into a sword to kill people, or it can be kept as a plow and used to grow more food to help people. So every technology is a two-edged sword. And what I see that there are 5 technologies driven by 3 accelerated technologies that are really going to drive this future of food. And the 5 technologies are alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, genomics, the microbiome, and synthetic biology. So they're 5 technologies that affect both industry and consumers. And then we have 3 accelerated technologies, which is AI, sensors, and quantum computing. So they will accelerate those other 5 technologies to an even greater extent. And when I first came up with that model, I was talking about traditional AI, not the generative AI that we now know. And that has even hit the exponential curve for how fast it's accelerating our existing 5 technologies. And using those technologies, those accelerators, that's how we can successfully feed our 11 billion entities in 2050.
And do you yourself use, for example, so AI is the big thing now, so do you use AI for some kind of a research when it comes to it? Like, how do you apply it, for example, for your business? Because obviously, it's we're talking about 11 billion people in 2050. It's like the big things. But for you as a business owner, obviously you are a speaker. You are obviously doing these conferences. Do you utilize any of these for yourself when it comes to, say, to AI?
Absolutely. I mean, with AI, if you're not using generative AI in some way, shape, or form, you're so far behind, you may as well cease to exist. I use it a lot for research, for looking, for concepts. I still find that wherever I look, AI is great for coming up with a few ideas or a few pieces of research, but the ability of the human mind to make connections where the AI can't see it is where the trick comes in. So I tend to look, when I'm looking at what's happening, I look for technologies that aren't even necessarily in the food industry. And I say to myself, how could they be applied to the food industry? One of my favorite ones is a company called Koniku. And what they've done is they have put mouse neurons on a silicon chip, and it can smell better than a dog's nose. And they're using that at the moment, testing that to test for explosives at airports.
Oh, wow.
I said, what happens if you use that to smell a food product? Use an AI to analyze the profile from the food product, then use that when you're trying to develop the product. And so this is a smell that people like. How do I duplicate that smell in my product? Now, no one I'm aware of has ever said, or that I read on Koniku, no one was suggesting that. But for me, that was like AI, this nose, how do they use them to then digitize flavor and smell so that you can actually be spot on when you do your product development to make product that people are going to actually want to buy and they're going to like. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at these cutting edge technologies and what we call as a futurist, signals of change. So that things that you see and things you come across that point to a specific direction that the future is taking. And that's what I'm always looking for, and I spend literally sometimes hours a day looking for that. And that's where AI comes in very useful sometimes, is I find something, I say, well, find me all the articles on that. And it finds all the scientific articles on that, because I often go back to the articles. I don't just believe the newsletter.
Yeah.
The newsletter quotes an article. So I'd say, okay, well, let me go and read the article just to make sure that what they're saying matches with what the original research says, and that's where AI comes in quite handy.
That is a backup, yeah. And just last week we were actually finishing a mastermind in Romania, and then I had one guy. He came, and then before we started, he's like, "Hey, I have this great business idea. It's gonna be awesome." I'm like, "Okay, what it is?" So he told me, and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's already here. We are already using it. There are a few of those." I'm like, "Did you do your research?" And it's like, yeah, I put it in ChatGPT and it told me it's a good idea. I'm like, yeah. So that's the problem what people do, because they have an idea and they put it over there, and ChatGPT is to make you happy, there to make you happy. So it's like, yes, brilliant idea, now focus on this, develop that. And if people don't do a little bit better research, then they'll start spending hours and, I don't know, days and months to work on that until they realize actually it's already here. So it's, people need to be really careful of what they believe and then do deeper research, right?
Yeah, I think it's the old adage, Vincent, which is you get the answer to the question you ask. If you ask ChatGPT if it's a good idea, of course it thinks it's a good idea because all these other people are doing it, it must be a good idea. What you need to ask it is, I've got this idea, can you find anyone else anywhere that's doing something the same or similar? And then maybe not just ChatGPT, but try Claude as well, try Perplexity, try Copilot, ask them all, because I've done that before with things. You ask Copilot and you ask ChatGPT, and I've used the French one, Mistral, as well. You get quite different viewpoints with the different LLMs that you use. And that can sometimes be quite useful to get different, because even the AIs have a different point of view.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for the business side of the thinking, we use the one which we white label with 9-figure entrepreneur from USA. So we are able to also offer it to people. It's Profit Mine AI, but the thing is, like, it's a business brain, right? It's things that's a 9-figure business owner. So every idea you put over there is like a business. So it helps you to work on your business. So basically you get to where you want to be. But for example, so we use that as our business brain, the thinking, but then we use, for example, Claude to go and apply it. Like, like you are a speaker, and like when there is this a speaker form, like you need to fill up before you go, for example, speak in the PSA. Yeah. So I'm the president of PSA Edinburgh. And then I had a speaker now for May, but only one, and I was missing another one. So I was keeping in the back pocket my business partner, and I'm like, okay, fill up the form, and then so because it needs to go through their system, and it's like, yeah, sure. He didn't really want to do it. I'm like, yeah, just use AI, whatever. So then we went, and then we finished a new book together, and it's about that is the framework, right? So then it was like, okay, take that framework, create me the keynote. So it created the keynote. From that, it created the slides. Even we didn't ask for slides. It created 15 slides for it, which is very nice. It was like 5 minutes. And then we went, okay, we took it so we did the thinking in Profit Mine AI, then created the keynote in Claude. And then we said, like, okay, we put it in Manus and go and fill up the form. And it went and it filled up the form. And then we just submitted. And the funny thing is, we give, like AI can do those things, but when it's new, we were both like watching, like, how is it doing? It's like, So instead of saving time us doing something different, we are both watching it. And then I'm like, wow. But now we'll watch a couple of times, but now when we know it's fine, so then we'll no need to watch and it's just gonna do itself. But then it took like 10 minutes to do it all keynote, all slides, form filled up, all on a different AI. So we use a lot of different ones. But like you said, like I ask you, so, if people don't use AI, especially if they are business owners, so they can, they either start using it or they can, close the business even like right now because they're not going to survive because the competition is going to be so high that there's no chance.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the thing is, the longer you wait, because the change is exponential, the further and further behind you get, the more and more effort you've got to put in to try and catch up if you can. So that's the big problem. And that's what I see with these new food technologies, with those accelerators, that they are changing so fast. I always say, if I only knew today what I knew 6 months ago or even 3 months ago, I'd be absolutely useless. Because whenever I give a keynote, because I talk about cutting edge technologies, the night before I check all my slides and examples on AI. Is that company still around? Do they still exist? Have they closed down in the last week, maybe? Or have they now raised $100 million and they're no longer a startup? Or have they done something I don't know about? I have literally sometimes changed a slide the night before because the slide is no longer any good. That's how fast things are changing. So, and that's cool.
No, it's really good what you are saying, it because that's as a speaker, you need to do that. You need to adapt, right? And you need to adapt quickly because these changes are quick. And then you can have an audience, someone, and they can be like, but that's not true anymore. That was last month. And then some speakers just keep using the same materials for years, and they don't realize. So that's one of the things also we really learned a lot with our coach, JT from Fox from USA, is like when he goes to different countries, he uses different things, like this or different. You need to use different language. When we've been in Australia, like he would obviously speak about the shops over there and not in the Europe shops, because people wouldn't know that we have Tesco. People in Australia, they don't know. And then I didn't know that there is the shops where I've been. So it's like you need to speak their language, right? So it's like adapt quickly as well. Yeah. So that's really, really important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think so with those exponential changes, that's why my model is called a texponential model. And that's because I say food is now technology. They're so intertwined, they're inseparable, that you can't talk about food from farm to fork without talking about technology. And what we know about technologies is they most often advance exponentially. So food is technologies advancing exponentially. Food is now texponential. So I talk about a exponential food future, which is determined by those 5 technologies and the 3 accelerators that we talked about before. And that's what I've designed that for, is so that my clients and audiences can go read an article and go, oh, okay, I see that technology. Oh, that fits in that one. Okay, here's a framework that I can use to understand all this information that's coming out, all this data that I'm seeing. Here's how I can make sense of it using the texponential model. So that's the idea behind having that model, is that framework for people. Now, it's not every technology, but it's what I say are the 5 most influential technologies. Yeah. And I wrote about that first back in 2019. And I just this week did an update. What does it all look like in 2026? And I had the 5 technologies back then. Since then, I've added the accelerators and the texponential, but those 5 technologies have withstood the test of time. They're still as relevant today, and they're still the most important today as they were 7 years ago, which is what they say, like dog years, seven dog years to 1 human year. So that was 50 years ago in exponential terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned one of the 5 was microbiome, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. No, it's just a pop stayed in my head because last week when we finished the mastermind, we actually invited one. She's functional medicine. She does it for a very long time. She's from Switzerland. So we were interviewing her about microbiome. She got me the gut health test. So I'm going to be receiving that very soon too, so I can do it.
Great.
Yeah, it was very interesting. There was like, I was nicely surprised that it was a room of 14 of us there. And then I think I think 80% of people, we are all in like that space where it's like, we don't tend to go to doctors just for normal things. Like we like to find the different ways to, and especially food is a big thing, right? So if obviously we are what we eat, so that's when it comes to gut and microbiome is so important. So yeah, she was very helpful with that. I don't know if that will be any connection you would like me to do, but we'll be more than happy to introduce you. I don't know. You never know, what kind of collaboration can be.
That's right. I mean, I think as you probably said, look, the discovery of the contribution of the microbiome to human nutrition, I say is the most important discovery in nutrition we've ever made. Because my background is microbiology. And when I did my microbiology degree back long, long time ago, the theory was the only good microbe was a dead microbe. If we could just kill all the microbes on and in us, we could reach our full genetic potential. And now we know that without our microbiome, we could only extract a fraction of the nutrition that we currently extract from all of our food. And we know just how important our microbiome is. And that's why the microbiome and genomics are the two technologies I talk about when I talk about consumers, because they are the biggest drivers of consumer food behavior. Because so if you look at your microbiome and you know what your microbiome is and how that's affecting your ability to metabolize your food, you know the contribution of your genomics, then you have a very, very good picture of how food affects you. And then if you use things like smart rings, smart watches to gather data, then we've now seen the era of digital twins. So there's one called Harvey and Harvetta, they invented quite a while ago, and they model 80,000 biochemical reactions, 26 organs, 6 blood types, and the microbiome to determine and predict how you react to your food. So imagine that powered by generative AI with all the data we've got from sensors. And in the future, we're going to have even more and more data on what's happening in our bodies. This watch I have is the Galaxy 8. And the reason I bought that, even though I had a smart ring, is it measures two things that are really important that the ring doesn't. One is called AGES products, AGES. Reason that's important is when we eat products with a lot of sugar in there, not only does it spike our blood glucose, but the high glucose content combines with our DNA, our protein, and the fats in our blood to form like a sludge, which accelerates our aging. And this measures the AGES products in our blood to tell me whether I'm eating products, and particularly fried products and heavily processed products have high AGES products. So it tells me that. And the second thing it does is if I press my thumb to the sensor on the bottom of the watch, it measures what's called beta carotenes. So they're the breakdown products of all of the polyphenols, those nice colored compounds we see on our fruit and veg, which are so good for our microbiome. And it tells me whether I'm eating enough fruit or veg based on the beta carotenes under my skin. So that's two very important contributions, not just to our immediate nutrition, but our healthy aging. Because one of the biggest, hottest trends or items in human nutrition is the difference between health span, which is how long we live cognitively and physically healthy, and our lifespan, which is when we die. So there's a big gap in there. And for most countries, the gap is somewhere around 10 to 12 years. So I think we're going to have 10 to 12 years of very poor cognitive and physical health before we finally die. So the aim is to bring health span as close to lifespan as possible. And I say, oh, excuse me, Vince, wait a minute. I've just been told by my AI I have 6 months to live. So I'm sorry, I can't make that speaking engagement anymore. I don't get my affairs in order, but I've been brilliantly healthy. I'm 115 and looks like I'm going to die in 6 months. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. So you just want to fall off the cliff. You don't want a slow, horrible decline. You just want to fall off the cliff and die. So that's what a lot of the research now is going into, is not improving lifespan, which is what a lot's been going into, but improving span. And that one of my new keynotes is on that longevity and aging, the contribution of food, because food is the foundation. It's not the only thing, But it doesn't matter what else you're doing. If you're not eating well as the foundation, you won't age well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was just turning around, but the book is upstairs. It's yeah, I first discovered like a few years ago from Tony Robbins' Life Force. He wrote the book Life Force. So there's a lot of these things about the anti-aging, and so that got me also very excited about what's coming. So yeah, I mean it's crazy what everything is available. But like you said, the lifespan, like people are prolonging the lifespan, like you live longer, but like living longer, taking 10 pills a day and being in a pain, it's not really good. Like, and if you, for example, I had for example, my grandma, 2019, she died, and she wanted to die because she was in pain. So that it's better for her to kind of, now not be in the pain. So if obviously people will be healthy and then die and then wouldn't suffer as much. So it's much better than just like, yeah, you lived till 100, but the last 20 years you were suffering. So it's not really a life worth living, to be honest. So definitely focusing on the health span. And also,
I think, yeah.
Yes, one of the things you mentioned also when we met in Cairns is because of these things like the hoops and the rings and the watches and all the, obviously we all, not all, but like a lot of us are kind of keep wearing them and trying to find out the data and seeing what's going on. So you also said like the food industry will need to also adapt based on what's gonna be, what they need to produce, because the younger generations, they actually, because they have more data, then they will watch and they will be like, oh, actually, I want to actually eat healthier, right? Rather than doing whatever in the past because we didn't know. So that's also a big thing to kind of change in those companies in order to produce new things, right?
Yeah, because I think in the past, what we've concentrated on doing is making a relatively small range of things in very, very high quantities, very quickly and very cheaply.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're going to see in the future, I don't think that any company, no matter how big, can make an individual can of soup for you and me and everybody else on the planet. Yeah, exactly for us. But different groups of people will metabolize foods in the very similar way. So maybe instead of having one can of tomato soup, you might have 3 different cans with slightly different ingredients for people who metabolize their food in a different way. So you can get to some degree of personalization. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a food technologist, right? And I tell you, I find trying to analyze all the data from my ring, my watch, what I'm eating and everything else is all but impossible. I don't know about you, Vincent, I can't tell you how much fat and protein I ate in the last week, but if I could find some way of doing that and then having an AI which can then interpret that data, even if I don't measure my food every day, once you've got enough data, even if it's relatively infrequent, and you've got an AI like a generative AI, and where they excel is in pattern recognition, right? So if it looks for patterns and it goes, Tony, every time you eat a meal with white rice in it, your blood glucose spikes. So you're one of the people that has a really bad reaction to white rice. Let's test that tomorrow when you wake up and see what happens. And if that's right, maybe you should go to brown rice or some high protein pasta or full fiber pasta or something like that. So it'll be able to look for those patterns and steer us in the right direction for something that's better for us. And I don't think it's going to be the food police. I don't think it's going to decline your credit card when you go to have a piece of cake at the shop with your coffee. But it will tell you, Tony, you were away speaking, and boy, did you eat some high-fat meals while you were away. So if I were you, you don't want to put that weight back on, and I'd be looking at your fat consumption the next few weeks. Yeah, okay, yeah, I enjoyed myself, but now I have to take care of what's going on, because it's the old one. It's a business maxim as well. You can't manage what you don't measure.
Yes. Exactly.
So you can't manage your health and your aging if you don't measure it. Now, some people don't want to know. That's not me. I don't understand that. I think the earlier I know, the more likely I'm able to do something about it.
Yeah, the same, exactly the same as in business. Exactly the same. When you know, you can measure, you can manage. If you don't know, you have no idea what's going on.
That's right. So that's the way I look at things. And I think these technologies that we're seeing, and that's why this is going to have such a dramatic effect on consumers, because they're going to go, I want food that's good for me based on my microbiome, my genetics, my lifestyle, what I'm doing at the moment. I want something that's good for me. And and even that's going to change, because a lot of times people now think of meals as, okay, so it's basically, they call them day parts: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and some snacks. And I go, no, you don't think about things that way. You've got to think about food as an event. An example I use is, let's suppose tomorrow, right, I have a big meeting. I'm going to get a big consulting client, right? So for breakfast, I want someone to make me cognitively sharp. I want to be wide awake. I want to be ready to go. I want to perform. I get the contract. The next week, I go to Hawaii because I'm celebrating getting the contract. Do you think I want to be up and sharp and cognitive and ready to go while I'm lying on the beach after breakfast in Hawaii? No, I still want breakfast, but I want something completely different from my food. So people are expecting their food to do something more for them than just the nutrition. They might want it to make them sharp, they might want it to help them to relax, they might want to help hydrate them. All sorts of different functionality they're going to want from their foods. And again, that will in part be determined by how they react to food. There was an article just came out the other day that correlates your microbiome with how well GLP-1 drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic work. If your microbiome is of a certain type, you don't lose as much weight. So there's that interaction between microbiome and medicines and things like GLP-1 drugs. So very, very important to understand that linkage for everything from medicine to how healthy you're going to age.
Yeah. No, I like it. Like you mentioned about the food, to think about the food when you eat like an event. Like I have two examples. Like when we did the mastermind, like my business partners like, hey guys, have a good light breakfast. Don't overeat anything. We need to be sharp because we are working. We are having a mastermind whole day for 5 days. And then in the evening, have a dinner, chill out, relax. It's okay. But in the morning, be sharp. There was one example. And the other one was yesterday, my daughter, I went to pick her up for gymnastics. So she had 4 hours gymnastics. So she had a break in between. And then she had different types of things. Like she could have my wife made her some sandwich, but she also had an apple and then obviously water. And then I asked her, like, did you eat during your break? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, what do you have? And she's like, an apple. And then she decided to go for an apple because she knows that she just needs a little bit to get her going. But if she's the full sandwich now, she's not going to really do these things what they do in gymnastics, and it's going to be heavy. And when she finished, she had a nice cooked stew, whole meal, So then she had that kind of afterwards. So it's really nice to see like the kids also think like that, if they can think like that. So just yesterday.
How old is your daughter?
She'll be 10 in 2 months. Yeah.
So she's a Generation Alpha.
Generation Alpha.
Gen Alpha was born 2010 to the end of 2024. And I was talking on someone made a comment on LinkedIn that Generation Alpha are too young to be worried about what their food does to them. And I've said, don't underestimate Gen Alphas. They know as much about food and everything else at age 8, 9, 10 as other people knew when they were 18 or 80. So don't underestimate there. And the other thing I find with Gen Alphas, and tell me whether I'm right here, Vincent, if the Gen Alpha wants to do something or not do something, generally the family ends up going along with it.
Yeah, that's fun.
They have a huge influence on what goes on.
Yeah, but I mean, we are very lucky where we live in Scotland, like the access to things what we have, like regarding the food, like we have a very nice farm, like, good quality meat, organic veg, and this, like you can buy, deliver. So like really good things to do like that. And then my wife, she bakes sourdough, makes kombuchas and all this kind of things, which really helps, which a lot of people, they don't do, but we know how important it is. So we always say, like, we rather pay a small bill now than big bill later. So we either spend a little bit more money on the food, but we don't get sick, later. So,
absolutely right. I mean, I was just saying to my wife the other day, look, yes, it's a little bit more expensive to buy fresh fruit and do these sort of things, but you can either pay that bill now, or you can pay a lot more later when you're eating healthy and your health has gone downhill because you weren't eating right in the first place. So I
Yeah.
completely agree with what you said. It's better to spend a little bit now than a lot more later.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'll have the last question to ask you to wrap things up. So, and it is about. I mean, it could be to do with life or business, and I'm sure you experienced something like that in the past. Like you were, obviously working on your business or something happened in your life, and then you kind of were like, I don't know, it's like you fell down and maybe wanted to quit, or like being really in that kind of state where you were like, nothing matters. And if you've been, what helped you to go through it? Because I'm trying to always put that, because not business is not all rainbows and sunshines, and I really want to show people that everybody has a story to share, and then there might be a thing, and maybe something helped you, and then maybe you share something which resonated with someone. So I always ask this at the end. So if you have anything in mind, if you would mind to share.
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to when we talked about, Vincent, about COVID and the speaking. There I was, my consulting business is going well. I start on the speaking, I'm starting to go up the curve, and suddenly everything's just finished. No events, no speaking, can't get out of the country, nothing. So it's a matter of, well, what do I do? Do I just forget about speaking, just survive? What do I do? Give it all away? And I mean, I'm one of those people who goes, look, this too shall pass. And if I'm really determined that this is what I really want to do, I need to find a way to keep doing this even while all these problems are going. So I concentrated on my website, keep doing the research, keep doing the data, keep up with what's going on. Because if I hadn't, I would have had an almost insurmountable amount to catch up. So I think it really is looking at that. And one of my favorite phrases is a line from Hamlet. A thing is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. And the example I use is, it rains. I'm about to go outside and have a nice party and a barbecue. It rains, ruins my day. The cloud moves on 50 kilometers away. It rains on a farm that really needs the rain, or the crops are going to die. Is the rain good, or is the rain bad? Neither. It just is. It's how we look at things, how we look at this. We can either look at it as a disaster. COVID's a disaster. I'm going to give up. Oh, well, that's it. What am I going to do? Woe is me. Or look, okay, this thing is having a major effect. What am I going to do to keep going and keep myself motivated in the meantime? Because it will finish. It will pass over. And how am I going to ensure that I'm set up to take maximum advantage of that when eventually it does finish? So that's probably the most recent thing I can think of.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. You reminded me with the rain, and it came to also the business side, where I live on a house, so we do barbecue, and then it would start rain. So then we're like, oh, we can do it. Then we would go inside and we would find the alternative. But then I live in Scotland, so it rains a lot. So so I'm like, in a business, you either react or anticipate. So now I anticipate that it can rain. So I have a slide bought a gazebo. So if it rains, I'll just take it out, and I still do the barbecue. It doesn't change a thing, because I know that might be happen, and then it's not going to affect my mindset. Like, oh, it's raining. We still have a barbecue. So anticipation.
Foresight strategy, Vincent. Foresight strategy, that is.
Yeah. Good. Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing everything today, Tony. It was really good to get to know, all this different information, because it's things which a lot of people don't share, or they don't. I've never heard so many things about what is going to get to the future of the food industry. So it was really good, really powerful. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for having me on the podcast, Vincent. It's been a pleasure, and good to see you again, even if it's virtually this time and not in person.